Ja, hallo zusammen, schönen guten Abend. Herzlich willkommen zu Texte zum Nachdenken, die Nummer 21. Wir freuen uns sehr, wieder hier im Cabaret Voltaire zu sein in Zürich. Herzlich willkommen, Josef Strau. Danke fürs Kommen. Wir freuen uns auf, was wir gleich hier hören. Ich sage kurz was zu Texte zum Nachdenken. Das ist eine Reihe mit Lesungen für das Schreiben in der Kunst oder Kunst als Schreiben als künstlerische Praxis. Ähm, Ich bin Benedikt Bock, das ist Sarah Lehnerer. Wir machen das seit 1,5 Jahren zusammen. Texte zum Nachdenken ist schon ein bisschen älter. Auf diesen T-Shirts da hinten kann man jetzt also das 4-jährige Journey sehen und wenn man will sogar tragen. Ähm,
Das war's, okay. Dann mache ich weiter und habe die große Freude, Josef Strau kurz vorzustellen. Das mache ich aber mit Zettel. Josef Strau beschäftigt sich seit mehr als 30 Jahren mit verschiedenen Konzepten der Textproduktion und ihrem Bezug zur künstlerischen Arbeit. Als ein Künstler sozusagen, der schreibt und ein Schreibender, der Kunst macht, verbindet Strau in seinen Texten das Tagebuchartige mit Theoretischem und Fiktionalen und befragt dabei Konzepte von Autorenschaft und Subjektivität. Während der vergangenen Jahre hat Josef Strau aber auch an Formen einer unmittelbaren Verbindung von Texten und Ausstellungsobjekten gearbeitet. Für verschiedene Ausstellungen sind so zum Beispiel Textobjekte, aber auch Leselampen entstanden, die eine Art Träger für seine Texte sind. Seine Objekte und Bilder entwickeln sich so also aus Schriften, als deren Display sie zugleich auch dienen. Seine Texte finden sich aber auch in Büchern, wie zum Beispiel der Publikation Spirits and Objects and How Non-Productive Love is Sometimes Contained in Them, das ist der Titel, der Publikation, die 2020 anlässlich seiner Ausstellung im Kunstverein für die Rheinlande und Westfalen erschienen ist und aus der, glaube ich, heute Abend auch Teile lesen wird, Auszüge lesen wird. Josef hat für heute Abend einen Gast mitgebracht, seinen Freund Evan Josie, den er vermutlich gleich selbst noch mal ein bisschen vorstellen wird. Und wir freuen uns sehr, dass Josef und Evan heute hier sind. Vielen Dank.
Hi, thanks for coming. I'm very happy to be here. So Evan was already introduced. Should be okay, I guess. The other thing is, I brought many texts I will read in English language. I've written all the texts that we read in English, but still proof that it's not good English is that I cannot even read them. And so I asked Evan, an original American speaker, to help me because I might break down. All the texts were written very fast. They were written for exhibitions, just as a kind of parallel stories to the exhibition about what happened to me during the exhibition, whatever it is, thoughts, walks, dreams, whatever. But it's not a diary, but it's some things I obsess to write down. Not actually I, but something in me. I guess what I call I now on a normal situation is not really writing these texts. So whenever I wrote them very, very fast, and I was not capable to edit them much, and so they got into print immediately. And in Düsseldorf at the exhibition, there was a suggestion to make a catalog, and I said actually it would be good to print all these press texts, maybe a bit edited. But then I was supposed to edit and read them again And it was a very difficult situation for me. We had to delay always the print of the book because I had to read my own texts that I wrote so fast and just send them away. So now I try something else. I try to read them. It will be terrible, but I have great help here. That's Evan. But I don't know. I try that. I might always stop and try to explain, to help a bit, to bridge the embarrassment, but probably it's not embarrassing. But I wrote an invite for exhibition that opened last week in the Dépendance Gallery in Berlin. And
in Brussels.
In Brussels? Berlin, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm still very nervous to be here in Zurich. Yeah, okay. So the thing was that actually it is a bit of collaboration as well, that I think my work, not my work, but work in general, I think in a way to help to make something is always to think a bit about the so-called instrumentarium, the tools, whatever. And so I was thinking that this kind of writing a text down and then printing it and then putting it on the wall, there's something too easy about it. And so I read about it, a great artist, Emilio Brini, a big idol for me, that he wrote always on this Olivetti Lettera 22 typewriter. And so I tried to get one, so I bought it. And then I couldn't really deal with it because it makes it too slow. I'm not used to it, so we found this method, the new instrumentarium, that I sat and looked at the wall and kind of tried to write my press text. And Evan was typing, which was extremely slow. So I was very happy that it's not a text that has any kind of line in explaining too much. It just starts, but when the great proof of the perfect decision about the instrumentarium is that when you see it at the end, it's actually something very different than you intended to. The Rilke, redemption. The Canaletto, sky, clouds, sun, stop, clouds, stop. Clouds, stop with hypostasis, magnetism, helkati, thisness. We redeem from hate, we redeemed from Rilke hate. Helkati is the zoom, to zoom clouds, maybe love, solace. There are other things. A poem by Rilke. Rilke, your hair, your clouds, your lake city. It is not Rilke, it is this Prague, the city of Prague, in this Rilke. The possession he wanted to destroy, but never could. The idols of tin figures, the tin of his mother, the tin everywhere holding his memories. He wished to burn and melt them. Looking for the sun, the tin memories that he named Prague. But what if he could have gotten rid of it? What if his harlequin was erased? Charming the harlequin. Okay. That was the press text written with the typewriter. Now, a second. So I'm just saying I wanted to try to make some order of this, the text today, and the idea was something like to go the redemption, this kind of trying to go to your own past and kind of taking it out of the past, some event that is kind of making one guilty or alienated, to take it back and to write it down, to bring it back to light. And then maybe partly it will be redeemed. Past events are, of course, never redeemed. So the first redemption was Rilke for me now in this exhibition, because when I started to become maybe a bit of a writer, of an artist, or whatever, a rebellious student, 16 years old, and against everything and so on, my father, in a good will, thought I loved to read, so he gave me a big Rilke complete writings and put it on a birthday on the table. But at that time I was way too far already in coolness and in radicalism and so on. And so I screamed at my father, I hate Rilke. And it's disgusting, I don't want to read Rilke, it's so bad and so on. It was worse than that. I kind of really screamed, and then so I felt now what a mistake and what a decision in my life to go totally into this coolness, believing, later, whatever, I don't name the coolest people now, but now I realized when I came back to Vienna after many years that Rilke is very interesting. Not that I like to read him, but he fought so much himself, because actually this kind of pompous bourgeois kind of language that he presents so often, he himself hated it and tried to get rid of it all the time and tried to become a real modernist artist, simple and modern art. But it was not possible. But then one would think if he would have thrown away his whole Rilkeness, then he would have probably never have that what he is. So I thought, well, I have some Rilkeness too, but I should not destroy it anymore. And so we try now to read another text that I've written, and which is about redeeming another thing. This time not Rilke, but a friend of mine I felt always very competitive with, until I realized that actually, and I felt always he's the most competitive artist that I ever met. He's a good friend of mine, and what a horrible fate, I'm friends with the most competitive artist. So, as I sat at the bright and lavish tables, it's written very fast, so it might be a bit difficult. As I sat at the bright and lavish tables of my gallerists, while being fed long and most lovingly prepared delicacies, the talk came onto some artists that even were particular friends of theirs, and that were obviously friends of mine as well. And I started and then kept calling them, those artists, way too competitive. But no doubt, in fact, by speaking so, I was, and I certainly revealed myself through saying that, as the most competitive of all, but was oblivious to myself and my doings and about that fact, and what is truly meant to call some other artists too competitive. Now, as I came back to the table shortly later and was asked in a friendly and caring gesture about what my latest exhibition title, Loyalties, meaning was, I showed off deceitfully about all the shades of good and great loyalty in regard only to my own life. So badly, so that even I, in all my pompous pride, started feeling something was wrong with me. It was not just my competitiveness that was and now felt wrong. It was my twisted perception of these, my friends, that was utterly mistaken. So I suddenly had to face the truth that they were not only not at all competitive with me, but it appeared to me that they were supportive to me in whatever I did. In fact, I suddenly realized they even were really loving me. They loved to a degree that I instead would probably, not even the best case, ever be able to provide in such an amount of love. If somehow anything would be related to love, then it would be me just boasting of love. It was pompous, flatulent pride. It was pride that poisoned the world and the people hidden under self-deconstruction and low self-esteem. When I wanted to make works of art, I usually did not know how to deal with the work, to satisfy my endless pride, and therefore I had to find far-fetched themes to be able to boast to myself. Sorry, I cannot continue. Can you please? Here it is.
Already early on, still being a child at our house, I always believed I was, or rather would be, great at making music, but in fact I could not play, was unable to learn the simplest exercises. But then instead of being good, I used to develop silly, ugly tortures for my sister when I heard her playing the piano in such most touching and great ways. My hate spread all over. I had the greatest books on my table, but refused them, saying they were all boring and bourgeois, a sheer waste of words. I was played the most sweet songs and played the best music, but I tried to destroy it and interrupt it with the worst possible sounds. When everyone else left the house and I was alone and it was just me in the rooms, I opened the piano and tried to manipulate it and make small destructive interventions in it in order to feel its resulting pains, as if the inside was its real heart that was so open to me and I could apply pure destruction to it. When the families sang all together, I invented noises for horrible disturbances, and sometimes I made my sister interrupt her exercises and forced her to take a walk with me. We lived in an old-fashioned, sleepy and quiet neighborhood, and everything was provided to make me a happy child. I suggested going to the garden of the castle and the pond with the swans, pretending I loved them. But internally the contrary was more true. When we arrived at the lake's bank, I stood still next to the water, keeping some distance, and opened my arms to them to deceive them, and seeing me, the swan rushed towards me and tried with his painful noises to chase me away. When we had to escape and walked home up the winding road, my sister pondered what had made the otherwise always sweetly behaving swan, what it might have felt to react to my presence in such sudden and monstrous ways. I told her that he was interiorly, blindly evil and only pretentious when at other times appearing as good, and that he kept the truth in dark silence, that I knew he had sensed my own adverse intentions in the room with the piano, where I sometimes sensed I was observed by the quiet icons.
If I may, I might add that this story was read as well now, or written, because I was once asked by the gallery in New York by Queen of Tali that she wanted to have a tote bag for as a gift for whatever clients, and so she printed a tote bag. She asked me to maybe suggest the tote bag, and of course I did not. Of course I would do it, but I thought, well, I cannot do any fashion item or whatever, it's impossible. But anyhow, we slowly, and so on, and then I had this idea that as actually it's really the great challenge is not the design for me, but the challenge is that it will be a bag that people go around at the openings in New York. They go even with the subway, and I will write on this, I will be printed a big tier form text, and this text should be one of these confessions that I am basically the one who always names others the evil of competitiveness, but actually I'm the one who creates it all everywhere. And so I thought it's actually a very nice thing to imagine that in New York people go around and they read this text in the subway, in the galleries, in the museums. So my confession of the truth that I'm able to kind of tell that. Okay, so that was that for, and now the other things before coming here, I made a bit of map and I call it the buoy. You know, when I'm very nervous and I have to do a kind of reading or a talk, I cannot really prepare and read it. I have to make some kind of drawing that I basically think I have to jump into the water and swim. But what if I drown? There are these buoys that I can swim to, some thoughts. And so this time the first buoy was the Rilke redemption. Then the second was the artist redemption. Then the next buoy is the topic. All topics I used is angel. The one and might be another love. Okay, I'm going now to the next topic, which is angel. The man living below us left our house and moved away, but now, while writing this, he came back and I remembered the influence he had here on our house. Our house is very small for a house in the city. It has one small apartment each floor, one window to the street and another one, second window to the garden. Suddenly, and in between the apartments. Suddenly I think of this man being the model of an artist in what I am trying to pursue here actually. One period last spring I got up very early each day for work. There was still not even light outside, but when I brought the coffee through the whole way around into the other part of the apartment, brought the coffee back from our kitchen, I heard the prayer-like singing from below, slow and sometimes insecure, going on while I had the coffee and observed the disappearing darkness in the sky of the morning between the trees in the east, and from the other side, from the hallway, came the daily song, morning song. For weeks I did not think of it, but opened the door slightly to have the sound from it to come into my room. I could even open the door from the bed. Then, one day, I came by coincidence to web pages related to rituals of the Sufis. I read how the very serious Sufis, the very serious ones, can be recognized by how they sing this song very early each day. The song is there for the angels, for the night, and for the angels of the day, and that each day they work according to their times, and it happens that before the dusk, that the angels of the night shift leave their earthly workplace, each house, to go back and report beyond, up. And when they say that, and hopefully say that they have hopefully seen, that they are in a house where one sings this song, then everything should be fine in that house. The man in the place below, he was a New York taxi driver and a Sufi. He was very tall and slim, very good looking, and very easygoing and fun and very relaxed. Sufis are members of a community of poets, and so he was too, and was a clear example of a poet without an audience and without a desire to have one. It would fail his achievements with the angels if he would ever consider an audience. One should say he had no human audience, whatever, but when he abandoned our house, he now left it with the most human kind of poetry influence I've ever felt. Okay, so next one. That was actually part of a text, a longer text. I had to write a kind of story about Bernadette's Corporation for the huge catalog, and I had to write about a certain period, and it was the end of the story actually. The other part was more about Bernadette's Corporation. Can you please help me? I cannot read that, it's very difficult. Babek?
Yeah. Or
Babek? Babek.
okay.
It's the name of a cat. So next topic is cat.
Babek, born Staten Island, 1992, passed away in 2013 in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. Biography and introduction. First, there is, as always, nothing but a white, empty field of a dock. There's probably nothing in the world which is as empty as an empty white field in the new document. In case it's the first new document, opened before the first words are written in the beginning of a cat's biography. The moment when the thought of writing the biography of Babak crossed my mind for the very first time, I was looking out of the window of the indeed very fast-traveling high-speed train and watched the wide landscape, the faraway lines of the low and long-stretched hills below a full clouded sky, and remembered that we soon will reach the place which is said to be the very exact geographic middle and center of the zigzag-shaped plain called Germany. And I felt as if this metal-coated long monster I was sitting in was, if looked at from high above down to the earth, was like a sharp, unbreakable, keen-edged needle cutting a straight line closer and closer towards the heart of the strange body called Germany. But a very reasonable and cultivated-looking landscape kept developing outside of the window. Nothing would suggest that anything would appear different in the place of this mythological national heart, but I remembered as well that we were not so far from a region of small cities where in old times most fairy tales were developed and written down, and the names of these cities would be mentioned in all their indeed quite very strange fantasies. But the appearance of the landscape would not be fantastic or weird at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. All places and the whole nature of the place where most fairy tales were produced was most average and conventional, in fact, and probably it still would be so when we will have reached the heart of the whole country. But while I was carried away by observation and considerations of the nature of the places of my journey inside the fast-moving landscape, cutting monstrous metal needle inside of Germany, I could only hardly stop thinking of one dear cat, which had just passed away a few days ago in a place so very far away from me. As far as we all would know, she was born in Staten Island, New York, and lived her last years mostly in Brooklyn, Williamsburg. In more exact terms, she lived in Williamsburg her last 2 years, but within these last 2 years, she moved during her last months from one of the most southern corners of Williamsburg to one of its most northern sides, which is not a large distance, but could be a long distance in many other ways as well. But her last change of address has probably been put so prominently to the beginning here as the circumstances and the certainty that it was her very clearly expressed opinion that she would move there at this late age might convince its reader already here that she was a very special animal and a special personality, and this altogether might convince the reader that this book is worth reading through to the end, even if this reader does not usually share any interest in the lives of non-humans or in all the things mentioned here as they are so important in her life, not in New York, and not in its different scenes, no, not in all the cultural activities such as music, art, theater, and fiction writing. That way revealed that all of Babek's life experiences were made within these scenes, and actually within the most authentic parts of these scenes, within its most real and sometimes within its even most radical parts. On the contrary, she never has experienced anything outside of these scenes than these for us so particular and special behaving and looking cultures of art, music, etc. And in order to return back to the more factual information of her life, she never even ever left New York City, whatever, probably never even considered ever leaving the city, but very unusual and special as well for humans and for non-humans. She spent part of her lifetime in each of the 5 boroughs of the cities, moved through all of them, and here's the fantastic information. She expressed at the very end of her life that she decided to move again and remained at the place where she actually first was supposed to just spend 3 or 4 weeks, just for reasons of ample convenience. Clearly decided and expressed that she would want to stay there for more time and remain there and make it her permanent home and her place of caretaking, as she already felt her health and sometimes deteriorating or becoming unstable at least.
I guess it seems to me my texts need a bit explanation or commentary. When I was living in New York in the beginning, I was saying everything is unbelievably great and everything tells so great stories and so on. And so there was this thing that I lived in a house with someone else, and we got a cat that was very old, and Persian cats are usually don't get that old, usually 16, 17 years old. It's very old for them. Even younger, 12 actually. But this cat was already 19 years old, but she had health issues. So we brought her, it was a bit unhealthy place, and brought her to my house and investigated her history or her biography. Not biography, but like she basically moved into different apartments. It was not only the last 2 years with us, but before she was 1 year there, 2 years there, 3 years there. So the last one was a kind of New York musician. And before it was with all these many musicians in New York, and some of them were pretty well known or something, and so whatever. So she came from Staten Island, came into Manhattan, then to Brooklyn, whatever. I liked the story very much, and then one day, so I thought, I always wanted to write a biography about somebody else, like, I thought to just whoever it is, actually, I asked Tony Conrad, he was a neighbor of us, if I can write about him, the biography, but then one came out, a very intellectual one, but I wanted more the other side. But so anyhow, it went to my mind very long, but then I had to go to Germany for some reason, went with the ICE train from Hamburg to Munich, and it was very kind of half-empty in the leisure. I was with the computer, I described how the train goes, and then I realized I have to write a biography about this cat that passed away a few weeks before. And so I thought, well, before I come to Munich, I should at least finish the introduction to the book. Then I never wrote, of course, the biography of the cat, and that is the introduction that I thought for the big biography about this cat called Babek, a very impressive, huge Persian cat. I don't know, maybe we read one more or two. What? Tears and more tears? Yeah, that's... Yeah. But that has to be read, so... What is this? That's the mirror?
No.
I don't know which one that is.
No. It's the grandmother.
The grandmother is longer.
Yeah.
No, the grandmother. No, that is
Okay.
the grandmother. No.
This one?
Yeah. Can you do that, please? It's actually my first text that I wrote in an so-called automatic way. I had to write. I'd never thought about writing things like that. I thought of myself, if I'm a writer, I write really theory and philosophy. But I tried, but it was always huge confusion of thoughts and notes that did not lead anywhere. but I could achieve at least a few friends of mine asked me for press texts or something, so I could really serve my desire to be this theoretical writer. And so one of them was Josephine Bright, but it was her first catalog that she did for Kunstverein Braunschweig. And so she asked me to, we talked a lot about photography, and I was saying that, I talked about Roland Barthes, about the so-called darkness of photography, or the kind of dark mystery it carries with itself as its time passed, etc. And so I showed off that way, and then she asked me to write her first catalog essay for a catalog of hers, and I was very proud, and I really I wanted to do that. But then I made many notes for weeks, and from different philosophers, and put it together, but it was really no text. It was very bad. So I knew that the very, very last deadline was on the next day at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was sure I can make it now. But then it was 12 o'clock, midnight, and it didn't make really, it was just a torture, a horrible torture, a nervous breakdown, meltdown. And then at 12 o'clock, I decided maybe I have to relax my brain, and I write down something extremely stupid, just that I write something, and when I'm relaxed, then I can go back to the Roland Barthes and photography. And so then I wrote down, and as I wrote down, it was very easy. Something else wrote it down, basically. It was not me. Of course, it's about me, but it was with such an easiness. And when after a few pages, I finished 1 hour, hours later. And while I wrote it, only my fingers had to write, and it went by itself. And I actually laughed the whole time. I thought it's funny, but silly, of course, extremely silly. And I wrote and wrote. And then at the end, I thought, well, it's weird. This text actually brings more of Roland Barthes than everything I can do by quotes, etc. And so, whatever, here's the text. If you could read it, I talk too much.
Kneeling on the kitchen floor, I put a little of the most expensive cat food in my mouth, but didn't swallow it. The cat was beside me because of the good smell of the food. I put the mush back on the floor, and the cat immediately ate it. Then I tried to stand up again, but I had drunk too much. It was December 24th. Beside me was the bench. I lay on it. Then it occurred to me that in the last few days I'd been trying to make something of an unpleasant sentence, but hadn't got anywhere with it. Only a stupid compulsion to keep repeating it plagued me, so I said, "Prussia, wake up, but wake up only in me." In the morning, when I had just got up, I caught sight of myself in the round mirror, and for the first time I saw something really unusual. I saw not the normal face, which now and again had perhaps just got a bit older, but this time it was a quite new, unknown face. And I knew, this looks like a bohemian. This is the face of a ghost of a bohemian. But that's something I certainly never wanted to be, never yet. Never had I thought myself would ever experience the vie de bohème or anything like it. And far less, it's certain, did I think then that I myself would suddenly assume the face of a bohemian in the mirror. After my Christmas encounter with the mirror, which showed as if in a photographic moment, not my present but my past, an inner biographical past which I had suppressed, as if in a prolonged state of fatigue and a lack of close self-observation, I decided I would from then on do all I could to ensure that the bohemian in the mirror was suppressed, becoming invisible again in the future. Unfortunately, I just tried to extinguish the results of the past, not within myself, but at least from my face, by leading an ordered, regular life. Seemingly for no good reason, that meeting in the mirror makes me think of that critical moment which, nonsensical as it may sound, may have had a great deal to do with a fundamentally aesthetic approach to photography. It was like an uncanny pose not struck by me, but invented by my mirror image. It was just as Roland Barthes says, that photography offers me the pose as perfect past. It places death for me in the future. I shudder at a catastrophe that has already happened. People say that mirrors and photography are closely connected. Like photographs, the mirror image pursues us and, according to Barthes, mediates through the feeling of decay and time past. Till now I could never understand why, and I found the connection somewhat strained and stupid before, that photos are capable of offering some kind of evidence, the evidence of a mirror of our past in the essence of photography's eye. For this organic essence, there is only time, aging, and decay. There is no present. My photographic mirror experiences have, however, not subsided since, quite the contrary. So now I live with the ghost of an officer from some old days. The first time he confronted me was in an article. For some people, a typical inhabitant of this country, it said, was still something like a mysterious, highly educated officer who went for walks along the conifer-lined coastlines of the Baltic. After reading this, I thought at first I had totally forgotten this vision of this past officer. But later in the day, when the shop assistant at a tea merchant's held out some Japanese leaf, ordering me to sniff it, it was as if the panic of being examined prevented me from naming the aroma, which I might normally have been able to name. So I looked at the tea in the packet, and it appeared in color and form to resemble dark pine needles. So I said it smelled like conifers in a forest. "No," the assistant shouted at me, "it smells like the sea coast." And so in that moment he suddenly stood in front of me again in the same, almost photographic moment, the uncanny gray officer. It was only back at home drinking the new tea from the new green teapot that my officer developed his full flavor. I'm still trying to get rid of him, or if that doesn't work, to justify him. That naturally works even worse. Then I have to think whether his ghost doesn't come from me myself, whether his stupid, compulsive repetitiveness might be a sort of recurrent self-portrait from an earlier time, rigidly programmed before the Vie de Bohème. I conclude that he has rightly become too uncanny, and that my growing affection for the mirror image is very banal and represents a no longer available decayed past. Could there somehow be contained in this affection a possible reflection? And if so, the political reaction would have to be satisfaction at having vicariously overcome this officer within myself, in which case I would have to enter into a state of competition. What can he do that I can't? Does he speak better French, better English? Could he play the piano better than me? It's disappointing, this fairy tale unfolding within my own four walls. There, the cold, gray strips of coastline without much light hang in white frames with round mounts, round like the organic, round eye of the camera, just without the ghost of the uncanny officer in the green teapot.
Okay, thank you for listening to that. It was my first automatic text, the first of this, so it's still a bit it was kind of trying to find out why I was able suddenly to write a text that makes some sense grammatically, that maybe it's kind of a ghost that comes out of the teapot or something. It was such a new experience that I had all these kind of projections where this text came from. So, anyhow, I think we arrived at the end of the very first text that I have written in that series. And in a way, I want to thank you very much. You have listened to that. I think you got a little idea. So there's this catalog from Düsseldorf. It's called Spirit and Objects, and all these texts are together in it. And from König Publishing. Yeah, it was a kind of, actually we always delayed the book presentation because I was afraid. I told Eva Birkenstock, I'm so afraid of reading that at the book presentation. But today in the train from Milano, I thought, oh, why should I not try it today? Thanks for having had me. Maybe I can do one day a book presentation now. I'm feeling a bit better now. Thanks for your listening and not leaving that and staying here. Thank you very much.